Hi.
Hi.
What is that?
It's an ice axe for climbing. I'm heading off to climb some volcanoes just outside of town.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Should be
Climbing
good.
a volcano. Good luck.
Thank you. Have a good trip.
Yeah. I've got a neighbor.
Their rise and fall. But half the puzzle is still missing. The story of how it all began. The early years of Maya history were long dismissed as pre-classic, a primitive era lost in myth before the rise to greatness. Now, a new generation is turning that idea on its head. In the heart of Guatemala, they are finding a Maya world that flourished 1,000 years before the one they already knew.
Almost like finding a new civilization.
Beneath the jungle, ancient revelations await. What may be the biggest pyramid ever built, towering over a mythic kingdom.
It's like Jerusalem for the Maya. That's the place they remember.
A dynasty of kings, their names forgotten for centuries.
He's buried somewhere.
A temple lost for 2 millennia. And on its walls, the Maya story of creation.
400 BC, 500 BC, 600 BC.
This is the final frontier of knowledge about the ancient Maya. As archaeologists cross it, they are entering the kingdoms at the dawn of Maya time.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
Spring 2003. Fires blaze across the jungles of Guatemala. Many set by farmers and ranchers in search of new land. A satellite photo shows the extent of the devastation. Almost 100,000 acres of rainforest in flames.
We were stunned, staggered by the amount of burning and the devastation that was taking place. In fact, there were areas where the helicopter was in such dense smoke that we couldn't see 5 feet on either side of the chopper.
Archaeologist Richard Hansen is traveling to the edge of the inferno. His destination is a treasure threatened by the fires, a city lost for centuries. El Mirador. Richard suspects the surrounding Mirador Basin holds clues to the origin of one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known. Builders of magnificent cities like Tikal and Palenque, the Maya were among the greatest architects of the Western Hemisphere. Their astronomers mapped celestial movements with astonishing accuracy. Every thought and fact under the sun could be expressed in their intricate hieroglyphs. Remorseless warriors, they fought bloody wars of conquest as their civilization spread across Mexico and Central America. This is the history we know of the classic Maya culture, whose cities flourished between 250 and 900 AD. But archaeologists are now discovering a Maya civilization that existed a full 1,000 years before that, in a time they call the pre-classic. Many of its remains lie buried in the Mirador Basin, in the same Guatemalan jungle now threatened by fire. At the lost city of El Mirador, National Geographic grantee Richard Hansen has worked for more than 20 years to solve the enigma of the early Maya.
Well, this is the third level of the Great Pyramid of Danta at El Mirador. The largest pyramid at the site, which stands for nearly a half a mile on platforms below us here, and probably one of the largest pyramids in the world.
It was built centuries before Christ in a time long considered primitive. But if the early Maya were so unsophisticated, how did they build a structure rivaling the pyramids of Egypt?
The person that commissioned this building was not a simple chief living in a grass hut. This was a king on the order of Ramses and Cheops.
Richard dreams of finding these kings from the dawn of Maya time. He hopes their tombs will reveal who they were.
They're lost to history. As of right now, we've never known who these individuals were, and never known, other than seeing the physical evidence of their prowess, we've never had a chance to know them personally. And the work that we're doing now is going to give us the chance to know these guys personally.
One of the smaller pyramids of this lost city has captured Richard's imagination. Could the magnificent engravings on Structure 34 be the signs of a royal tomb?
This is a large jaguar paw with an ear spool in the middle. You see the ear spool here. And it has 3 realistic jaguar claws emanating from a realistic cuticle. Here's another jaguar claw here and another one at the very bottom. The fact that we find this pre-classic jaguar paw coordinates very well with a king who we believe governed from 152 BC to 145 BC. His name was Yoknum Ichak Kak, or Great Fiery Jaguar Paw, and this may be a symbol of this. That's why this building is so interesting to us, because it's possible that this king could be buried here.
To test his theory, Richard has brought in the latest ground-penetrating imaging system. Expert John Liu lays cables which will transmit electrical currents through the ground. By measuring resistance, the system will map a section of the pyramid's interior. Will it reveal a chamber? Nearly 2 hours later, John calls Richard over. He has a result.
It's on this side.
It's on this side.
Yeah.
11 meters down on this side.
Yeah. About 10, 11 meters down. Yeah.
Hot dog. This is good news.
So
It's definitely there.
Yeah. So the shape. Maybe
The system has revealed a cavity, perhaps 8 by 2 meters, just the right size for a magnificent tomb.
Well, by golly, you can't. That is a chamber. We suspect it is, but I want to make sure that we're there. This isn't some kind of an anomaly. Another leg going this way. Okay, so it comes right across the top and back down here. The fact that this shows up then suggests that you got major cavities in there.
Yeah.
You just made my day, John.
Okay.
When it's all said and done, you know, we may come down and find there's Jimmy Hoffa.
Richard may be on the track of a spectacular find.
That's exciting, yeah. This is exciting.
It could be a discovery to rival the tombs of the classic kings who reigned centuries later. Legendary rulers like Pakal the Great. Pakal's tomb was discovered in 1952 at the city of Palenque by Mexican archaeologist Alberto Ruz. Today, archaeologist David Friedel is still unraveling the significance of that discovery.
In the late 1940s, Alberto Ruz found a rubble-packed staircase going down inside of this extraordinary temple. He didn't know what he was going to find at this juncture. He was in this hole for 3.5 years. But he knew he was taking a trip into the Maya underworld. And at the end of that trip, he found the most amazing thing that any archaeologist has ever found in the Maya world.
According to Friedel, Pakal believed he was the embodiment of a god. The tomb would be a map of his journey through death to resurrection.
Alberto Ruz got to the bottom of this subterranean staircase. He found a stone box right here, and he had to remove it. When he removed it, he found the sacrificial bones of a series of young people. And then he found this huge doorway, triangular, and he pulled it away and peered inside. What he saw was fantastic. It was a burial chamber with a massive sarcophagus inside of it, glistening with stalactites from centuries of water dripping down inside of it. So it was like a cave, but it was a sacred, holy cave.
Women would have carefully shrouded Pakal's body in cotton winding sheets. Ornaments of jade, symbol of life, were pressed into his hands. When his body was completely shrouded, it was drenched in red cinnabar, magical effication of blood, the essence of life. A jade mask would become Pakal's face for all eternity. Sealed in his sarcophagus, Pakal began a journey that would end with his rebirth as the god of eternal life, the maize god.
And carved on the sarcophagus lid was the image of Pakal himself. But not as an old man, but as a beautiful young lord. He's sitting inside of a bowl of sacrifice, and that bowl is at the base of a tree, and the cross-shaped tree is called the Wakachan. It's the world tree, it's the Milky Way. He was going to climb up the stars. It says Ochbe. When he died, he entered the path. He goes up into the sky, and there he rises in triumph as the maize god reborn.
Pakal's journey into the sky would take him back in time to the origins of the Maya world, where he would merge with the gods who created it. Pakal believed these gods were his ancestors, who sprang from a mythic place at the beginning of Maya time.
Pakal and his people trace themselves back to Kan, the primordial city. Kan was the place of the maize god's birth. That was the place. It really happened. It's like Jerusalem for the Maya. That's the place they remember, this Camelot, this original city at the beginning of the Maya creation.
Like Camelot, this creation place was a powerful dream. It would resonate through Maya culture for centuries. But were they thinking of a real place? It's controversial, but Friedel believes they were. The Mirador Basin, and the sleeping giant at its center, El Mirador. Who built this great metropolis? Richard Hansen and his colleagues think they've found some vital clues on beautifully painted pots from around 700 AD. Their hieroglyphs list a lineage of kings with their dates of enthronement.
The first king that is indicated right here, the very first king is indicated on 7 Chuen and 19 Pope, the day name, the month name, and 3 Imish, 7 Yash. We have the Chakchapat, the Lord of Kan. So the sequence continues for 19 successive kings in a row.
The dates made no sense. Then, fellow researcher Simon Martin had an idea. The Maya calendar is cyclical, repeating every 52 years. What if the pots were talking about kings from some earlier cycle of Maya time? What if they pushed the dates back 1,000 years, deep into the pre-classic? Richard's hieroglyph specialist, Stanley Günther, did the math.
And he called it an eureka moment. And lo and behold, we find that these dates do fit perfectly starting in 392 BC. So we think that this indeed is a sequence of kings that is a retrospective history, painted about 700 AD, referring to kings 1,300 years earlier.
If the theory is right, they have found a dynasty, 19 early Maya kings previously unknown to history. One of the kings on the pots is known as Great Fiery Jaguar Paw, the same king whose symbol seems to be emblazoned on the front of the temple at El Mirador.
We'll see. If he's in here, we'll get him.
Richard begins to dig, determined to prove that Great Fiery Jaguar Paw really existed.
We've got about 13.5 yards into the building now, and that represents about 22 cubic yards of rock that we brought out of there. This is one of the really tough parts of my archaeology because it's hot in these tunnels. There's no movement of air to speak of. You're confined, it's dangerous.
It will take Richard weeks to tunnel to the place where the imaging system showed a cavity. But there are fascinating discoveries along the way.
For example, here's the handprint, the left hand of a person who put it right there. Put the stone and mud right there. You know, when you put your fingers in their handprint, it makes 2,200 years evaporate.
As Richard digs, more clues to the grandeur of pre-classic kings are coming from beyond the Mirador Basin. Guatemalan archaeologist Francisco Estrada Bailey is on his way to another pre-classic site. The rains have begun and the roads are virtually impassable.
That's one of the reasons why nobody wanted to work here, because it's so hard to get here. In the rainy season, there's about 2 feet of water everywhere, so sometimes we have to use horses to get in and out of the site.
But the effort has been worth it. With funding from the National Geographic, it has led Francisco to a major find at another forgotten pre-classic city, Cival.
So we don't have just one large city like a Mirador, but a network of cities in the Maya lowland which existed in the pre-classics.
When Francisco discovered the main temple of Cival, he found that looters had dug away the back of the pyramid. Near the top, they left a small hole.
So I came here and I saw there was this opening in what looks like the front of the pyramid. And I stuck my hand here and I could feel it wasn't flat. There was a rise on the plaster. And I thought, well, maybe this is a snake carved on the front of the building, or maybe a mustache on a mask. And I thought maybe we should dig and find the front of the building coming the other way.
Francisco worked his way round to the front of the temple and dug a tunnel towards the center.
From the looter's trench, I was touching this wall, and I felt this rise here. And it felt like some sort of decoration. I could never imagine we would uncover something this wonderful.
Francisco believes it is the massive face of a sun god, 10 feet tall.
It's almost as if someone just made this yesterday, and it's incredible to imagine that we're touching this and we're looking at this just as people did over 2,000 years ago.
2 pairs of these masks may have flanked the temple stairway. Francisco thinks that they provided the backdrop for elaborate rituals in which the king impersonated the gods of creation. With godlike powers, these early Maya rulers could commission vast construction projects. Richard Hansen's team has discovered how they did it. He has found their quarries.
We excavated the quarries and recovered the tools found in the quarries and replicated those tools with our stone tool experts so that we could actually try to replicate the pattern in the stone. And this involved hafting the stone in a ways that we've determined they did it, and making the actual implements, and actually carving the stone with stone tools. The process of using stone on stone. The process of extracting stone and block, which made the same marks as they would have used anciently. And this is the exact sounds you would have heard 2,200 to 2,600 years ago.
Thousands worked back-breaking days in quarries like this, cutting and carrying stones that weighed up to 1,000 pounds. Nearby, thousands more produced lime plaster, which coated every building of every city. This was construction on an epic scale. The results were awe-inspiring. A vast metropolis gleaming red and white in the jungle sun. El Mirador. Perhaps 100,000 people. And at the eastern end of the city, the huge temple of Danta, possibly the most massive pyramid ever built. Long ago reclaimed by the jungle. Like all rainforests, the Mirador Basin is rich in life, but its soil is poor. Intensive agriculture is virtually impossible here, which has raised a puzzling question. How did the early Maya grow enough corn to feed the huge populations that lived in these jungles 2,000 years ago?
One of the secrets of the Mirador Basin were these marshland swamps that surrounded the basin. The original surface looked like this. It was grass covered with this type of grass, and we discovered that the Maya were essentially hauling tons of this material, thousands of tons of this material by human labor into the cities and building garden terraces.
In a village on the edge of the Mirador Basin, Richard has recreated the ancient garden terraces with their rich swamp soil.
They feed large populations and still have them being able to build buildings and have architects and astronomers and musicians and artists and all the trappings of complex society in the pre-classic was because of this muck. This was the basis of their entire society and what gave them the power to do that. This muck generated the economic engines of complex society in the pre-classic.
We know now how they lived, but stones and earth can't tell us what they thought. What did the early Maya believe? Some 60 miles from El Mirador, a convoy of trucks snakes its way through the jungle. They are on their way to the much smaller city of San Bartolo. San Bartolo was never more than a minor outpost. Yet it is here that archaeologists have found a way to understand the early Maya vision of their universe.
This was an elite compound where the nobles of this site lived and administered all of the goings-on.
In charge is archaeologist Bill Saturno, also funded by National Geographic. He found the remarkable ruins of San Bartolo after a grueling trek through the jungle. Bill quickly discovered he was not the first to arrive here.
When we arrived at San Bartolo, it was completely clear that the looters had had a long and enduring presence here. Of the 100-some-odd mounds we have at this site, every single one of them is pierced at least once by a looter's excavation like this.
By a strange twist of fate, it was one of those looters' trenches that would lead Bill to his great discovery.
I arrived here late in the afternoon after a full day's hike without anything to drink. Tired and hot and frustrated, I just wandered into this looter's tunnel to get out of the sun. And as I sat there, just past where the light enters, I sat down in this pile of looter's dirt and shined my flashlight up on the wall. Saw this incredible thing, this mural. Then I just burst out laughing, to be honest. I just, the improbability of finding a mural. It had been more than 50 years since a mural in this type of preservation had been found.
It is one of only 2 great Maya murals ever found. It is by far the earliest, and yet it is amazingly refined.
The lines just flow one into another. The colors are just vibrant, and the people are beautiful. They look like beautiful people. As we were uncovering bit by bit this mural, I felt incredibly privileged to sit here in this room that hadn't been occupied for 2,000 years and uncover this incredible work of art.
To help unravel the mural's meaning, Bill invited artist Heather Hurst to make an exact reproduction. She had just spent 2.5 years painting the other great Maya mural found at Bonampak in 1946.
Bill called me one day, and it was late in the night, and he called and said, you know, what'd you say to painting another mural? I said, yeah, right. There are no other murals to paint. And he said he'd found one. And I totally didn't believe him until he sent a JPEG. And when I opened the email, I was just blown away. Could not believe what he'd found. Not only had he found a mural, but he'd found an early mural that was nothing like anyone had ever seen.
Bill's laboratory is in the old colonial city of Antigua in the Guatemalan highlands. Besides Heather, he's called in 2 of the foremost experts on Maya symbols, Carl Taube and David Stewart.
Well, we'll definitely have about 4 meters.
Something that was really clear to me when Bill came out of the jungle with his first pictures of the painting was that this could be, one of the most important finds, if not the most important find in the last 20, 30 years in Maya studies.
In terms of late preclassic Maya, this is basically a Sistine Chapel. It's a painting of origin creation.
I don't think there's any doubt that this find is probably going to change our whole view of what Maya civilization was thinking about. When they were creating their art, when they were putting down their vision of their cosmology and the origins of the universe.
It's a scene from the great Maya myth of creation, recorded 1,500 years later in the epic called the Popol Vuh.
This is the beginning. There is not yet a person, an animal, meadow, forest. Only the sea pooled under all the sky. It is at rest. Only the god called Heart of Sky. And in the water, plumed serpent. In the blackness, in the early dawn.
The myth tells the story of the god of maize. He is the deity at the center of the Maya cosmos, responsible for the corn on which all life depends. The maize god descends to the underworld, where the lords of death kill him. They hang his head in a tree. Years later, his children, the Hero twins, come in search of him and defeat the lords of death. Magically resurrected, the maize god returns to the surface of the earth. As he emerges, the first day of the world dawns. It is a story that obsessed the Maya of the classic period. Here was a version painted centuries earlier. Not a primitive rendering, but one that was exquisitely realized. At El Mirador, Richard Hansen and his team have been digging for nearly a month.
Muy bien. Híjole. Ahí la tengo.
They're very close to where they think the tomb should be.
Dos metros.
But Richard needs clarifications from the imaging experts back in the U.S.
By what? I lost you. I lost you.
In the Mirador Basin, the best place to make a satellite phone call is on top of a temple.
We're digging where it ought to be, and it's not there. So you're doubtful that something might be on the centerline axis? He's buried somewhere. Now we just want to be the ones to find it. We don't understand, I need to understand what the resistivity is on some of these readings. Oh, yeah. We'll keep going. We're going to try some more.
In the Guatemalan highlands, persistence is paying off.
Nothing like this. Faded out.
They are studying an unexpected detail in the mural of San Bartolo. Writing. Among the very first hieroglyphs ever found from the pre-classic.
Well, it's really hard to overstate the importance of these glyphs here. We've never found murals that have had paintings with glyphs like this. They're very ornate. There's calligraphy here. There's artistry that we just have never seen in any other kind of discovery.
The pre-classic Maya could regain their voice if only David Stewart could read their text. Perhaps the most brilliant hieroglyph reader of his generation, David knows what marvels can be revealed when lost writing is deciphered. He also knows that making sense of unknown symbols can take decades, even centuries. For Maya writing, it's an epic story that began in Mexico in 1549. The Spanish conquest is only a few years old. Care of Maya souls has been entrusted to a Franciscan friar, Diego de Landa. Landa struggles for years to convert the Maya to Christianity and wean them away from what he sees as the satanic practices of idol worship and human sacrifice.
You have to consider Maya human sacrifice from within their own frame of mind, that blood was required for the continuation of the cycles of agriculture. So although we may look at blood sacrifice as this horrific occurrence, for the Maya it was very necessary.
The arrival of Christianity didn't decrease Maya devotion to blood sacrifice. It seemed to reinforce it.
Now, in comes a Christian God, and with that Christian God, new images of blood sacrifice. In this instance, Christ being crucified. These are not peaceful
Christs. These are very bloody, bruised, damaged Christs. And so these images really rang true with the Maya, that this sacrifice of the Son, the God, was for them a very powerful image. And they took it upon themselves to do very similar things.
To his horror, Vanda heard that Maya rituals had taken a grisly new turn. Children were being crucified. True or not, he used these revelations as justification for his campaign to stamp out Maya religion in all its forms. He ordered the burning of their sacred texts. He humiliated the accused as their religious icons were destroyed. An untold number of manuscripts, the heart of Maya culture, were lost in the conquest. Before long, all knowledge of their hieroglyphs had disappeared. But the very man who ordered the destruction of Maya texts would furnish the keys to their eventual decoding. Diego de Landa. Even as he was suppressing Maya religion, Landa was struggling to understand it.
Well, what he was doing was, like many of his contemporaries, he was writing a manual for other priests to know the native religion in order to stamp it out.
One day, Landa asked a scribe to write down what he called an ABC of Maya, an alphabet of hieroglyphs.
He had a Maya informant, a scribe named Gaspar Antonio Chi. And Landa would ask him, okay, how do you write the letter A? That's Spanish for A. Or how do you write the letter B, which is B in Spanish?
In later years, when people tried to use Landa's alphabet, they could make no sense of it. Landa was ridiculed, his ABC consigned to historical oblivion for the next 400 years. Spring 1945. In the final days of the Second World War, Soviet troops have closed in on Berlin. Many of its buildings are in flames. A young Russian soldier, Yuri Konarosov, races into the National Library and emerges with a volume of Maya texts. Konarosov is a student of languages. Back in Russia, he immerses himself in his rescued Maya writings. He hears about Landa's forgotten alphabet and decides it could provide the key. For years, Konarosov struggles with the document. Then, never having seen a Maya ruin in his life, he finally makes sense of Landa's ABC. He has broken the Maya code at last. In time, the cities of the classic period could be read like books. The walls of ruined buildings were a record of their lives, their births and marriages, their battles, and their deaths. Konarosov kick-started the revolution of decipherment. 50 years later, David Stewart is following his footsteps as he puzzled over the last great enigma, Maya writing from the pre-classic. The intricate glyphs on the mural defy decipherment.
I couldn't really tell you what any of this means. There are elements here that I've never seen before. So there's a different feel to these glyphs. There's something else going on, maybe a different system before they standardize things later.
What seems like a defeat is actually a revelation. David believes he is looking at a snapshot from the dawn of Maya writing, before it settled into its fixed form. For the moment, its meaning remains a mystery, with one important exception.
The exciting thing about this particular text, though, is the very last glyph. And this is the way this scribe at San Bartolo wrote it. This is the glyph that is actually very recognizable from later examples as the word Ahau, which means lord or noble or king.
It is one of the earliest written records of a pre-classic Maya king. But where are their tombs? At El Mirador, Richard and his team have tunneled deep into the Jaguar Temple, finally arriving at the place where the imaging system showed a cavity.
Verlos un poquito más.
They could be minutes away from finding the tomb of great fiery jaguar paw.
I just broke to the cell wall. No hay otro, no. ¿Será que otro ahí? Or ya rompimos esta? We broke through here. We found more fill and rubble. There should have been a chamber or something on the other side of this wall. This is a setback. There should have been something there. So the fact that it's not there tells us that the elusive Khan kings are still elusive.
Does it mean that Richard's mysterious dynasty of lost kings is mythological after all? Richard is sure they're real. He is not going to give up that easily. At another temple, he prepares to excavate next season.
Maybe one of our Maya kings is located in this thing.
These early kings are still lost to history. But the image of one of them has been found. It's the latest revelation of the San Bartolo mural. Just above the glyph that means Lord is the painting of a pre-classic king, possibly the earliest ever found. He appears to be sitting on a scaffold throne, covered in red and white body paint at the moment of his coronation. The ceremony would have been spectacularly stage managed. High on a temple top with his people gathered below, the new ruler received a sacred bundle, perhaps a symbol of kingship. Beneath him, sacrifices recalled the death and rebirth of the maize god. It is an image of unrivaled majesty and power. And perhaps a quest for grandeur great enough to be its own undoing. In the 2nd century AD, many of the cities of the Mirador Basin collapsed. Richard Hansen thinks he knows one of the causes. It's the story of a mighty culture brought to its knees by lime plaster. What did it cost to give every building, every temple, its thick, gleaming surface? To make their plaster, the Maya heated limestone on wood-burning kilns. But only freshly cut trees burned hot enough, and it took a huge quantity of green wood to make relatively little plaster. By the team's calculation, the Maya had to burn nearly 1,000 acres of forest to coat one large structure. There were hundreds of buildings at El Mirador, and they were always making them bigger.
This is the first floor of this building. It comes right up to the stairway here, a brightly red-painted floor, very hard, extremely durable, and about 9 centimeters thick. But then, all of a sudden, shortly, they added another floor immediately on top of this one, 20 centimeters thick. And imagine the wood and the manpower and the amount of stone required to make that much lime.
As Maya elites demanded ever grander cities, the lime industry helped to deforest the Mirador Basin and clog the swamps on which they depended.
And when you strip the forest like that in a tropical environment, you get clay washing into the swamps, which rendered those swamps inaccessible to their farming strategies and farming techniques. And when you can't eat, you're in trouble. And one of the reasons they couldn't eat is because of this kind of exorbitant use of resources.
In the end, the Maya of the Mirador Basin may have put themselves on a path to destruction by burning the rainforest that nurtured them. Could a similar story be playing out today? The cradle of Maya civilization is once again under assault. This time from logging, oil interests, farmers, and ranchers. How long will it be able to survive? Richard Hansen is fighting to have the Mirador Basin established as a wilderness archaeological preserve. If he is successful, the jungle that reclaimed the first Maya cities 2,000 years ago will continue to shelter their remains forever.
Every time I come out here, I still am amazed, astonished at the human saga that took place here. All of a sudden, those 2,000 to 3,000 years evaporate, and you can feel them, you can sense them, and there are a lot of ghosts here. This should be a monument to humanity. This should be a monument to nature as well. And I hope someday that this can stay pretty much the same as we see it now.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
To order a video cassette of this National Geographic special, call PBS Home Video at 1-800-PLAY-PBS.
I am PBS.
Teacher alert, teacher alert. Do you believe the program you just watched can be used in your classroom? Well, we have so much more to show you. Get comprehensive KOCE program information online at www.koce.org. Then click on Education Teacher Alert to find great KOCE.
Southeast of Seattle, in the Pacific Northwest state of Washington. My attempt to summit Rainier starts at Paradise. I'll make the slow climb up to Camp Muir at 10,000 feet. From there, I'll take the Disappointment Cleaver route up to the summit, Columbia Crest. I'm at the base of Mount Rainier, where the Whitaker family has been running these guide services for the past 30 years. In fact, one of the Whitakers was the first American to ever climb Mount Everest back in 1963. Whoa! This is Peter Whitaker. He's going to be my guide, show me the ropes, and teach me all the right moves to summit this mountain. I feel like I'm an asset to the team now.
Excellent. One more big kick up over the top. Right on. You're plenty comfortable with that.
Yeah, this is fun.
Let's move into some other techniques.
All right.
If you don't work the mountain will work you. So you kind of grit the teeth a little bit and say, hey man, I'm not going to get pulled off. 3 years of endurance climb, the more efficient you are, the more you enjoy it. Rock climbing, 2 on a rope is optimum, it's perfect. Glacier climbing, 3 is really the best number, unless both climbers are